we're expected to go to college and then you're hopefully going to get a job. I think that's only for certain professions. I knew when I studied English what I was getting. I knew what was on the table.
When you came up here to Berkeley and you got into civil engineering, what was the realization you got that this may not be for me?
I came up with this composite picture of what I thought life was and what my values were. And I value being alive rather than just existing. I'd heard about this busking. I was like, oh, some people can make like 50 or $100. And right now I'm making $0. The landlord had just covered my rent for that month, and you do not want to owe that guy money. No one's going to do it for you. So you need to take the exact amount of time that you need to take to finish it. You just have to remember exactly why it is that you love to do what you're doing.
And if you could give one piece of advice to somebody who's either doing what you're doing now or wants to start, what would that be?
And to enjoy other people's music and other people's art. And that's the beauty right there. That's life. That's being alive. So if you start from that point and you got nothing, you have nothing to lose.
Well, I'm excited for my audience today because today I have with me somebody who I've been trying to get on the show for a couple of months now, and it's been very difficult because he has a very busy schedule. He travels the country up and down the Pacific Coast doing something that I wish I had the willingness to go out there and do, because it speaks to being able to follow your dreams, being able to follow your passions, and really honing your craft. So today I'm glad to welcome John Morgan to my show. Thank you, John, for coming. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for having me.
Do you want me to call you John Stephen Morgan, or is it John Morgan?
John's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure of that. So for everybody who doesn't know John, he actually grew up in Southern California in a small desert town called Acton. Acton.
Yeah, that's right.
Great. Yeah. And he transitioned here to the San Francisco Bay Area, where he went to Berkeley, studied both chemical and electrical engineering.
It was civil engineering initially, but then I switched over to chemical engineering.
Civil engineering to chemical engineering. Wow. And then he graduated there with his Bachelor of Arts degree. And like a lot of people, when we were in our
in English.
Your literature. Bachelor degree in English literature.
I left the engineering like 3 years in and then went with
That's right.
English. Yeah.
Bachelor's degree in English literature. And he did something that a lot of us in the early 20s always ask ourselves, which is, am I following what I really want to do, or am I kind of doing what society and everybody else tells me I'm supposed to do? And he decided to make a big change in his life and decided to follow his passion, which was playing music. Although a latecomer to piano, he definitely has made a name for himself, especially here in San Francisco. If you've ever been to Golden Gate Park on a random Saturday or Sunday and you've heard a piano in there, that's probably him playing. So it's very easy to go get attracted to the music in between the California Academy of Sciences and the De Young Museum, where I actually saw you at. And it was just a great change to be able to hear that kind of music in an environment where usually you don't hear that, and to see somebody playing as passionate as that, definitely inspiring. So, and what I wanted to start out with first is, with a lot of my guests, I kind of want to understand your story. You have a lot of knowledge for people who are interested in either music, having a career in music, what the ups and downs are, what they could expect to make financially, and how to actually have a living off of it, and the things that you can prepare for ahead of time, and really speak to what you've learned and help it for some younger people out there who have no idea how this whole thing works. How did you even get into it at a young age out there in a desert town in SoCal?
Yeah. The holidays, I guess, because family would get together, and my cousin, one of my favorite cousins to hang out with, because he's my age and his sister is my sister's age, was a classically trained pianist. So his parents would come over on the holidays and kind of showcase whatever, his name is Alex, whatever he was working on, classically, and then this one year, I think I was around 14 or 15, and he had got into playing Scott Joplin ragtime. And then I had this like sort of connection with the ragtime sound. And I was like, now I want to play piano now, because that seems like a whole lot of fun.
Wow.
I really loved it. And anything that sounded like early jazz, I really loved. So then my mom got, and my parents, they got me some lessons with this piano teacher / singer teacher, because my sister's really great at singing, so she needed some vocal coaching. This lady happened to do both, but she taught me out of these Alfred's beginner books, which I guess, I don't know if that's the standard way kids learn classical music, but it definitely wasn't classical music training. And it definitely wasn't something I enjoyed all that much. So those lessons got canceled pretty quickly due to me not practicing.
That would probably happen.
Yeah. So it was my fault that the lessons didn't continue. And that makes sense. I wouldn't pay for something my kid was doing if I had a kid that they weren't that into. I'd be like, well, maybe you should pivot to something else that you like.
I'd understand that part.
Yeah.
So how did that take you from as a kid to as you were getting into your early teenage years into adulthood? Like, how did you decide you wanted to go to Berkeley? How did that come up? And how did originally engineering part, how did that come up in your life?
Yeah, the academics were always really important in our household. So getting good grades all through elementary school, middle school was a big deal. Making sure that we did our homework, behaved in class, and so we could get a sort of better life and go to college. So my parents really honed in and focused on letting us know that the way life works is like it's better to have these qualifications and do these things if you want to have more options later in life and you want to be financially secure.
Typical example a lot of parents would have given us: hey, go to college, you get a good job, and then you'll be good, right?
Well, yeah. And I think like my mom she's from the Philippines. I'm half Filipino. The model that she learned from was her parents had like 8. She was one of 8 children. They sent them all to college. And so it was a very big deal for her to make sure that my sister and I also went to college. And with her like foresight was like, you need to have good grades to go to college. So number 1, we're working on those good grades. Number 2, send us to like a better school, because out in the desert, it was like a public school. It was like an arrangement of like 10 trailers in a circle was our like high school. So she found this like private school out in the valley called Alamany, where she took us, and they offered like AP courses, which is really important in terms of boosting your GPA, or at least getting a head start on college.
That makes
work
sense.
Circa like 2005. I don't know how much that stuff matters anymore.
I heard at least the SAT scores don't matter anymore. I mean, all these universities are saying we don't need that, and for whatever reason they say that. Okay.
I don't think those standardized tests are a great measure of personal character, fortitude, or any kind of testament to the tenacity of a person and their willingness to learn. I would agree with cutting those out of there. I mean, nonetheless, I had to get a pretty good SAT score to get into college anyways. So at the time, that was a really important thing.
So why Berkeley? Was it to get away from SoCal, or is it because Berkeley's prestige?
It was the best place I got into.
There we go.
Yeah,
That's a good answer.
In my opinion. Well, I mean, the other schools I got into were like Michigan. They were all engineering schools. I wanted to study engineering. I wanted to do civil engineering specifically because I was like, there's something messed up with these freeway systems down here. Like there's, the infrastructure of this country. And I was like, there's got to be some way I can help in that field. Especially when you're sitting in traffic every single day in Los Angeles. There's no avoiding traffic in Los Angeles. That's the kind of the way it works. Even when you're out as far out as the desert town I was, the traffic just extends. I mean, LA County is much bigger than just the city that you see.
Yeah. They still haven't figured it out.
No.
It's still a nightmare down there.
It's still a nightmare. The pandemic kind of figured it out for everybody that you could work from home, but I think a lot of companies are still demanding that people come back to a physical workspace.
Yeah. I think people just left LA. They're like, screw it. This was the last of it.
Yeah.
I can't deal with this anymore. I got to get out of here. And that might have helped traffic in a weird way.
Well, my mom, she drives, downtown Los Angeles every day, sometimes further. She was working in South Central on the Lucas Museum most recently. And man, the traffic is like with traffic from our house in Acton, it takes her probably 2 hours to get to work, and then another hour and a half to 2 hours to get back from work.
Man, that's brutal. That's
I mean,
half your day is just sitting in traffic. I mean, that's probably a good amount considering how many other people probably sit longer in traffic.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Her and my dad, they just had the strongest work ethic of anyone I've ever seen in my life. And I mean, part of that is what I tried to take on. Is like, I mean, if they can do that, I can
You can take on the world
I
pretty
can
much.
sit and practice piano for 6 hours a day, right? Or 7 hours a day.
Exactly.
And then do all the other stuff associated with it. I mean, you know.
Well, so what did you learn when you came up here to Berkeley and you got into civil engineering? What was it that sort of hit you where you said, maybe this isn't the right path for me? I came in here with the reasoning of I could do something for, let's say, the freeway systems, but what was the realization you got that this may not be for me?
Well, one thing was I think I had a massive change in lifestyle. I was very rigid and structured in high school. I would wake up sometimes 4:30 in the morning and get a workout in. I used to not be so fat, but in high school I played a football, and I was very serious about making it to college football. I love playing defense, so that was like I did that for 4 years. But my senior year, I tore my ACL right before the season started. And so I lost, any opportunity to do that. My parents had even, we worked out and they'd sent me to like the Notre Dame football camp and the UCLA football camp. I think they let anybody into those places, but it was still a chance to get seen by recruiters and get to play with kids from around the country.
Wow.
But yeah, so that kind of ended for me. And that was right around I started playing piano around 15. My senior year was I was 17. So I really turned to music after football didn't work out. And I was also, I was raised Catholic. It was more of my mother's thing to take us to church. That's what they do in the Philippines. Everyone's like pretty hardcore Catholic. But yeah, I don't know. I got to college and things freed up a little bit. I started reading some books and I got some ideas from some other kids and I stopped going to like church and I was like, well, I guess I don't really need that. And, saves me, most of the Sunday morning not doing that. And with the engineering and stuff, my schedule totally changed. You're like 18 and by yourself. There's no impetus for me to like wake up early to do anything anymore. So there was a phase of like, I don't know, maybe going whole like 180 on the lifestyle that I was living before, whereas my diet was very controlled. My times that I woke up, I worked out like 2 to 3 times a day, depending on if I felt like I got enough out of football practice.
Amazing what college will do to you, especially when it's away from home in a whole different environment. Everything just flips, and
it's also the Bay Area where people are a little bit more relaxed than that,
And UC Berkeley definitely has a reputation of being its unique way. We'll keep it there.
I think I must have said something weird in my personal statement for them to let me into that place. I mean, I had good grades and everything, but I was definitely an oddball, and I found other oddballs in that school. And I found even more when I started living in the cooperative housing system.
That kind of makes sense there. So I'm guessing that because of the change in lifestyle you have in college, where it's like I don't have to be as rigid, that sort of freed you up to say, do I need to spend this type of mental capacity on engineering, or is there something else I want to do? Right.
Yeah, I think the civil engineering thing, that was just like almost like on a whim or something like that. I don't know. I mean, there was I had these convictions behind it, but as I learned over the years, you can be a walking contradiction. That's just the nature of being a human being. So I'll say one thing out this side of my mouth, say another thing. And it's like both are kind of true.
Right.
I would love to work as an engineer. I would love to do chemistry. In fact, I'm still interested in those things. It's just, I think for me, when I turned 21, after reading a certain number of books, after me having conversations with some very close friends about philosophy and life, and then relaying that back to my parents, them filtering out any kind of like horse shit I was giving them, because they're older and wiser.
Right.
I sort of came up with this composite picture of what I thought life was and what my values were. And I value, I guess, like being alive rather than just existing. And it kind of, one of my friends, Barrett, gave me some quote, and it was like the Jack London credo or whatever, where he says, it's something similar to what I just said. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's a little foggy. It's been so many years, and
but it speaks to something that a lot of people in our generation, millennials, well, we've gone through that Generation X, like my older sister's generation or my parents' generation, didn't have to worry about. You know, we kind of grew up in the environment where if you go to college, you'll get a good job, enough said, and you'll be fine. Then you go to college and you graduate and you get out of it, and it's like, I got this degree, but is this really what I want to do? Do I see myself in an office or a cubicle for 40 hours a week doing whatever it is, just working on paperwork and whatnot? Yeah, maybe I make some good money. I can make a good living. But our generation has really come to the mindset of we don't just want a job. We don't just want a career. We want a purpose. I have no idea how our generation got that shift in where the other ones didn't, like Generation X and whatnot. But I've seen that a lot with people, you know, myself included too, where you had a job in your past life or you have a career doing something, but you want something else to be that you can focus on and be passionate about. Yeah. And I was admiring hearing the part of your story where you said, I could have done the civil engineering thing because they make, you know, a couple $100,000 a year or something if you really get a good job in civil engineering.
Same with chemical engineers. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's such an in-demand job because there's so few people who have the skills to want to be able to do that and do it well. And these companies, you know, biotech companies especially, they'll pay top dollar to get your talents in there. So definitely it's a lot of good money there. But then you're able to take that and say, this isn't for me. Like something's not right about this. So what was that realization where you said, I'm not doing this part anymore and I'm switching my idea to focus on something that I actually want to do? So like, this is probably where music came back into it, correct?
I think so. Yeah. Throughout college, I was playing music with friends. Most of my friends played music in some form or another. They were adept in an instrument, and I would host these jam sessions like once a week, every Friday night after school, after everybody gets off class, and you know, we get however many beers we can afford, and then we would play music all night, just improvising. And we did that kind of weekly, and I think that helped me out too. I was also just riding the waves of all the great literature I was reading. Even when I switched to English literature to study, I didn't switch to the music program at Berkeley. I was more into what I could glean from reading reading great authors. What at the time, what inspired me most outside of music was good literature. I just liked ideas. So I would read a lot of Henry Miller, a lot of stuff that wasn't in my curriculum. In fact, some of those English classes, I just totally was like, I'm not reading a whole bunch of John Milton. You know, I love Paradise Lost, but I'm not going to like,
fair enough.
I took it, and yeah, anyways, I wasn't the best student in college. For me though, yeah, it was really reading literature and having these conversations with people about life and what we do value, which is the creation of something and the appreciation of art and culture. That's what influenced me the most. With the engineering stuff, at a certain point, I was like, yeah, I don't want to like work at an oil refinery checking numbers on boxes, because that's essentially what your degree gets you. You're going to need like a master's or a PhD to get anywhere near designing those fun batch reactors that they have you doing exercises of in your like Chemi 150 class or something like that. Like that's not what you get to do. You get to like maintain the equipment that's already been designed and built because you understand how it works. I guess the only cool application that I did not see, which there's a ton of stuff I didn't see, you know, with my foresight, I would have bought like a house in West Oakland had I known that like those $150,000 houses that look like crap were actually $2 million Victorians 10 years later. You know, there's a ton of stuff like that in life, but
yeah, a lot of us missed that boat around here.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it just wasn't what I wanted to do. What I was going to say, the cool job that I think could apply now is everybody's into like craft beer. And I was really into it in college too. You know, Stone was just coming out and like they'd come out before, but the sort of small batch craft beer scene was just sort of bubbling up. I'd say like mid 2000s, right? So a chemical engineer would be able to work in a brewery.
That would be an awesome job.
Yeah, and possibly, if you're good enough and you worked at enough breweries, you'd get to help design the big boilers and the way they make beer. I mean, that's all chemistry. That's all chemical engineering, because making beer is a chemical reaction, and chemical engineering is essentially taking these chemical reactions and upscaling them like 5 million times.
Wow.
So you get different properties of things happen. You're dealing with like thermodynamics and things like that in these massive batch reactors.
So if you want to be a master brewer, maybe getting a degree in chemical engineering would be a good start.
Help you out. Definitely help you design a brewery. Yeah.
How about that? I never would have put that together. I usually don't. I would never would have asked that question. Like, what does it take to be a master brewer here? You would think, okay, you just got to smell the right hops and you got to get this. And you can be like Sam Adams on TV, right? That's all it needs.
Right.
Actually, it's a lot more in depth and detail.
Yeah. I think a lot of those guys still do it by the seat of their pants, but every brewery that I've been to, I know has a chemist working back there just to figure out, to keep consistency even.
Wow.
For their pale ale. So it always tastes the same.
Well, I guess it's at the very least inspiring for people who want to get a chemical engineering degree to know that if you also are into craft alcohol, craft beer, or winemaking, then hey, that might be right up your alley. So I guess you could say you have some to look forward to in that route, or you can work for Exxon and just like basically check the boxes all day, every day. That's
what it seems like. I mean, you'd need like a PhD to do the fun stuff.
I heard the same thing with like geologists too. Like if you want to be a geologist, that's great, but the only money jobs are like working like at Exxon, surveying things. You don't get to do any of the fun stuff like going out and seeing how the earth was formed per se. You need to go be able to tell your bosses at Exxon, hey, this is the place you want to dig and this is where all the oil is at. And it's like, well,
pretty much,
it fulfills your geology needs, but not really what you probably thought you want to do in the beginning.
I read these great geology books written by this author, John McPhee. He's like a creative nonfiction writer, but he loves geology, and it kind of opened my mind to the world of geology too. He has this book called Basin and Range about sort of all the history of, I guess, the Basin and Range area would border like, I'd say Nevada to California, where the Sierras are, and then there's like Basin Range. It's like a whole bunch of deserts. So that's the geography of that area, and then the geologists will come and look at like road cuts and stuff and try and figure out sort of the history of the earth. But those guys all had PhDs in his book that he was following around writing all that cool stuff about. And they worked for like, I'm sure the most prestigious thing you can do is work for the USGS, just doing like research,
right?
So I'm sure everybody that studies geology doesn't get that job.
That would make sense. And part of the politics that you have to play in the corporate world sometimes, or even in government agencies for like the USGS, how do you get in here and what do you expect it to actually do? That's interesting life advice for a lot of people. How did that go over with your folks when you said, hey, not doing the engineering thing anymore, going this route here? Were they supportive of it? Did you feel like maybe I was supposed to go down that more traditional college route of getting that 6-figure job, or what? How was that?
It was tough at first because they were real set on me doing the chemical engineering. But I think ultimately it just was some communication that needed to be cleared up, because all they wanted was to facilitate like what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. They're like, you got to live your dream. And we thought that you wanted to do this engineering stuff so bad. That's why we were so gung-ho about it and behind you on it, you know? But then when I told them, I think it's this music stuff, they're like, okay, well, maybe you can get like, a job on the side, or you can still finish the engineering and focus on your music, after you're done with your work day. And I was like, the way I understand it is that it's going to take me all day just to do that one thing already. So I don't really have time for the chemical engineering stuff. But after a while, we came to an understanding, and they really started seeing my improvements, both musically and like philosophically, the way I thought about life, and they got 100% behind it. They're like, this is great. And then immediately after I left college, I started doing that jazz thing, and we got invited to play the Monterey Jazz Festival, and this lady, Meredith May, a staff writer for the Chronicle, put us on the front page of the arts section. Mm-hmm. And so my parents saw all that, and they're like, wow, this is actually, there's something to this here. So,
well, I'm glad that you got the support from your parents. A lot of families that I would have known would have been like, if you're not going down the route that gives you the prestigious career, then what are you doing? Or they start giving you a hard time. So it's very good that you had the support from your parents to say, hey, go follow your dreams. We know you're going to do it, and we're here to support you.
Yeah,
that's great.
It was awesome. I mean, yeah, my girlfriend was like, she was like, oh, yeah, I told my folks at a family reunion back in college that I was studying philosophy. And they're like, oh, nice. You drive the philosophy truck when you got it. And I was like, dang, it's kind of true, though. There's no, I know you were saying earlier that like you can, we're expected to go to college and then you're hopefully going to get a job right out the gate. But I think that's only for certain professions. I think with engineering, yeah, you're going to get a job. But if you study English, if you studied like history or something like that, I don't have as much sympathy for those people complaining about not having jobs, because I'm like, you kind of knew when you're going into it. I knew when I studied English what I was giving up. I knew what was on the table there. I knew what I left on the table.
That's powerful advice there, because sometimes you have to have your friends tell you sometimes the hard truth of this is what's probably going to happen. So as long as you're aware of it, that's exactly. So with that, as you transition to this new career in music or new passion in music, probably one of the biggest questions that people are going to ask is, how do you make money as a musician? And especially in the early years when you're just trying to establish yourself, like how do musicians go out to make a living? What do they do to support their habit or their hobby?
I like that slip up though. It's true.
Yeah, their passion. They say, because cost of living, especially in the Bay Area, is just so expensive. Or if you're in LA or New York City, it's how do you even pay for an apartment and then still have time to go out and perform, and then how do you generate an income?
Yeah, I think it's all dependent on what you think your quality of life should be or what you're willing to do. I lived in warehouses for like 6 years. It's like a communal living situation. I lived in this ghost town gallery. It's like filled with drug addicts, transients, whatnot. We had like a 24-hour practice space, and I was like, cool with that. Rent was like $500. I think I can make that. That'll work. And then you sign up for like social services programs. Like I got on the EBT real quick. As I got older, though, I started thinking to myself, well, I think you can work a little harder, John, at what you're doing. And you can't just sit back and be some like young 20-year-old that's like crying about things all the time. So rather than like, cry too much about like how tech seems to be invading the Bay Area and how it's harder for artists to make a living. Sure, there's all of that. And sure, maybe it is harder. But in some ways, it's like, what are you willing to do to change that for yourself? And for me, it was throw quantity at it. So I just started playing like 4 or 5 times a week. I was already kind of doing that, but once I broke away from that jazz band, we didn't have to split money 5 ways anymore. And I was like, I know how to move a piano by myself, and I was always the one that had the van to transport it. So I got all that together, got my van and got my own pianos. I still have a very good relationship and friendship with DC Pianos. They're like a family to me in the Bay. And I was like, you know what? It costs $100 to fill the tank of gas. So I just made like a couple $100 somewhere. I'm going to go ahead and just use half that to fill the gas because that's what I need. So I just started feeding in all my money into the artwork. And that, I mean, I say artwork, but I mean like buying gas, paying for internet so I can like upload things to Bandcamp, buying paper towels and stuff that I would like cheat on, or like just overlook when I was in my younger 20s. Like, time's over for that. Time's up.
Well, pretty much, what would you tell somebody who wants to do a similar thing to you? Is this is how you have to make money? Is it perform in public, or do you have to go work to get gigs at, let's say, like a music recording studio or how do you go about finding those gigs to be able to actually showcase what you have?
Yeah, I think I'm really lucky with what I'm able to do. Not every musician can do that. I don't think it translates for singer-songwriters, guitar and singing. It's not going to be as surprising as bringing a real piano out somewhere and then like blasting off in front of people, which is something that I'm capable of doing, is like just going ham on the thing and hoping for the best at the end, and saying, come buy my record, come buy my CD, whatever, And I'm going
Right.
to go and do this again 10 more times today until I think I made enough money to like pay my rent. And that's the way I go about my business. And I think that I'm really lucky that I'm even able to have that opportunity.
Well, did you have a perception before you started this that, hey, I'm going to make it work because I can just go work here with my craft. I can go here and do that. And then I should probably make a couple $1,000s a month. I could probably do it. Did you have that
Right.
perception before you went into it? And then maybe what's the ugly truth of actually being a musician that nobody would tell you before you started?
Yeah. I mean, the ugly truth for me was I was like doing tutoring. I graduated around the time of the economic collapse. I mean, we're the afterbirth of that in like 2009. So with all that happening, there wasn't a whole lot of jobs available, and I wasn't hearing back from places like McDonald's or Church's Chicken, you know. And I was sending out applications everywhere. I drove to PF Chang's 3 times. I love to cook, so I was like trying to apply for a line cook job there.
Right.
And I showed up for an interview, and I got out of my 3rd interview with those guys, and like I realized, I didn't bring enough money to pay the parking in the Emeryville shopping center. And so I had to talk to the parking guy like, can you just let me through the gate, man? I've been here for like 3 hours. I'm sorry, I can't pay this right now, you know? And then I was like, I'd heard about this busking. I was like, some people can make like 50 or $100. And like, I was like, right now I'm making $0. The landlord had just covered my rent for that month, and you do not want to owe that guy money. You know, at the time you just, that wasn't a guy that you wanted to owe money to. Either way, he ended up being a real nice guy to me. We have our own private friendship in a certain way that's different than I see the relationships he has with other people. So he let me work it off by working the door, because the warehouse I was living in was also having punk shows like 4 nights a week. So there's always the door needed to be run, and alcohol runs and stuff like that. So I did that stuff. And then he actually had a Spinet piano, and he gave that to me. I called up my buddy who had a city car share thing, and I was like, can you pick me up at like 6 a.m, St. Patrick's Day, 2010, and drop me off at MacArthur BART and leave me there all day. I want to see how much I can make. And I think I made like $75 or something like that, or 85 and some change. I can't remember the exact change number. That was my first day. No, sorry. It was 185. Yeah, but I was there for 12 hours before he came back and picked me up, and I was like,
is that what you expected about, or you really had no
hell
clue?
No, I didn't know what I was going to make. I was like $50 would be fine right now. My rent's $500. If $50, that's 10 days. It's fine. I'll do 10 days in a row, pay that rent off, and then the next 10 days, another $500, I can like buy some food, you know? But it ended up being $185, and I was like, okay, well, this is pretty good. I called up my folks. I was like, you won't believe this. I just took a piano out in the street and made like $185. And then since then, it's just been like narrowing the system down. I didn't have CDs or anything. That was just all tips.
So when you got your first start, it wasn't, I guess, sort of reality hit that I can't just go to this club here and say, hey, I have a piano. Can you let me play for $500 a night, whatever? No,
I didn't want to do that. I'd played so many shows beforehand. I'd played shows all the way through college. I knew that there was really no money in that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Not unless you have like merch and you have a band that has like a lot of weight behind it. So because you got to draw people to these clubs, right?
Right.
And if you got like, I played shows where there's like 2 people there, and I was like, this was not worth it, you know, in some way. Because not only was it 2 people, it was 2 people that I knew, and I was like, all right, this is doing nothing, you know. What I liked about the idea of taking to the street is it just could be anybody, and also you're floating on the fact that like you're giving it away, in some sense, you know, you're there, it's for free. And people can tip if they want, and if they don't like it, they can just walk right by you.
I think that one thing that I would have learned, the more you're out there giving it away, and the more people come by and see you more often, the more they start saying, yeah, I like what he's doing out here. And it gets people to build a relationship with you where they actually may want to come out now and hear you're playing. And even though you don't ask for any money, now it's like, I want to give to you because I enjoy having you out here performing for us whenever I come on a Saturday with my kids to Golden Gate Park or whatnot.
Exactly.
And so it's a longer term investment, but the more consistent you are with it, the more you start saying, hey, actually, these same people are coming back to listen to me. They're actually coming to the park just to hear me perform. Yeah. And it's got to be a great feeling, but it took time. It didn't happen overnight where I just showed up one day and everybody's like, hey, here's a ton of cash. which I think would be a great lesson for any street musician to know, is that if you're going to do this, understand it's going to take a lot of time, effort. You're going to be giving it away pretty much at first because you're building up your image and who you are.
Yeah, I think so. You're giving it away at first, and you're always giving it away. I think you're never going to recoup in your mind what you think you worked for. Just like someone that works like collecting garbage thinks they're ever going to be paid enough. They'll never be paid enough for doing that job.
Right.
Even I think so, and I don't do that job, but I know what it's like to take out my own garbage, and I don't like it.
Believe it, yes.
Right. So, whatever work I think I put into it, and this is kind of like ties back into why I think there's a big change for me compared like in those early years when I was working in the warehouse, or like how some people might say, oh, life is so hard with all these tech people moving in. But like my personal experience has been like, I don't know, you just throw more work at it. Maybe that's stupid because I'm not working in the right way. Maybe I could be more famous for working differently, spending my time differently. But honestly, I think things have gotten better since the tech community moved in. I think they were ready and willing to engage with art in San Francisco. And I've been telling that to everybody.
I bet
and
you're
it's
getting
not
a lot
a popular,
of flack. Yeah.
not a popular idea, but I think that generally they're really nice, and they see an opportunity to buy a house. Well, like who's not going to take that out? They're making a lot of money. They can buy the house, and I think they're well aware of displacement and things like that. But I think for those artists that seem to like claim the Bay Area, it wasn't yours to begin with. It won't be yours forever. And I don't think it's any of your business to tell people whether or not they should live here, or to like wear your local badge everywhere, because everybody was, new at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Even
Good
if
point
you
to
were
make.
born here, you were new at some point.
It's a good point to make, and they all have their struggles as well. Just because you have a job in tech doesn't mean you're not without your own set of problems that somebody else doesn't know. Like we talked about earlier, you just don't know what someone else has gone on their plate. You only see what you want to see sometimes.
Maybe that tech person wanted to be an artist and actually could be, and maybe they were a better artist than the person that's complaining. I don't know. But they decided because of certain reasons, that they needed this money, and this was going to be important to have because of maybe they're taking care of their parents.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Don't know.
What I see though is like, the money that I make has gotten better. The support over the years that I've seen has like multiplied. It's more support for what I do. That's people seem to treasure it, and they're like, a lot of them, they're like, yeah, I just moved here like a couple years ago. And they're like, this is like what the Bay Area seems to be about. And it still is, there's still people like me out there.
That's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
With that, what's your thoughts on the music industry itself? Like in terms of taking your talents, like what would prevent you from wanting to go corporate or go to LA and kind of join a professional, get a producer, get a label? Or is there something about it that's like, hey, you know what? Does that take away from my craft and who I am? And I'm just kind of going back to, am I just chasing the money for it? Like, what's your experience with the music industry as a whole?
I can only speak to my experience as an independent artist because that seems to be the way things are going. I've noticed that people started basically just releasing singles so that they would have a new thing every month. It's that whole content thing we were talking about where you need to just keep producing content. Everybody feels that pressure. I try to resist it, but I'm now starting to like feed the machine, but I don't want to do it in singles. I want to do it like in fully fledged, thought out albums and just work as hard as I can to keep producing albums. I think for independent artists, as far as the music industry goes nowadays, I did move to LA for a couple years in the past decade. At some point I lived there for 2 years. It wasn't great for me. And I don't think I was in the position to be networking as much maybe as I am now. It was already so hard to make money down there that I didn't have the freedom beyond just the daily work that I was doing to get out and socialize as much as I think I should have or maybe could have if I had a little bit more money.
Gotcha.
But what I know about the music industry, I don't think is very much. I just know that I know what I know as an independent artist producing is I produce my own work. I talk to the actual CD manufacturers, the actual vinyl manufacturers, or at least some broker that's very close to the manufacturing side of things. When I printed sheet music book, I was talking to paper people,
Right.
So you learn a lot of stuff that way, and that's really fun if you're interested in that kind of thing. Like I am. I'm interested in all facets of life. So I'll sit there in the paper plant watching them like stack cut paper because I'm like, how does that machine work? I'm just like fascinated by everything.
It's amazing how some people's brain works. It's like you see the technical side of it as opposed to give me the result now. I don't care how it's made. You're just like, it's so awesome how it's precisionally cut and stacked.
Yeah.
It's a different way to look at it.
Well, and it makes it so that, when I cry about a result that I get, I know the whole process that it went through. So I'm like, where did this mess up? Rather than someone just being like, I'm so mad because I didn't get what I wanted, but they took no time to understand what the other person had to go through to make that thing.
Jeez.
And so I like to be heavily involved with that because I want to ensure that whatever I make and sell to people, I want that to be a really high quality item. Like the vinyl, I want the printing to look nice. I want the vinyl record to sound right. So I have to learn a little bit about everything, like Creative Cloud or whatever. I know how to use like Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign because I had to design books in InDesign. I had to do layouts in Illustrator, and then I have to do some of the artwork manipulation in Photoshop. So I have to know a little bit about all that so I can talk to the printer or the editor to figure out like what's wrong in this file. And then beyond that, I got to be able to talk to like Kelly Paper or something to source the exact type of paper that I want. So we're going in, I'm taking samples of things that I like, and we're talking about like sheet music, and I'm like, I want this ivory color about this weight. And so we're weighing papers out and figuring out exactly what I need so I can go relay that to the printer.
It's amazing how much of a business it is after a while. And you say, hey, this is probably wasn't, if you'd asked me 15 years ago that it would be like this, you may not have seen it that way. But now as you've done it for a while, you're like, hey, this is what it takes to get my name out there. I'm passionate about it. I love it. And you've been doing this for 12 years, you said? 12, 15?
Since I left school,
About 12 years.
12
and
years.
Between LA, obviously the Bay Area, Seattle, you just came back from Seattle. This is like your second time in Seattle in the last 2 months, correct?
Yeah.
So just
something like that.
I mean, the fact that you're loading up a piano into a van, you're driving it 15 hours or whatnot to go from here to Seattle to basically, like you said, give it away for free to get your name out there, to go and hone your craft in a different environment. Like that takes a level of dedication that I'm pretty sure a lot of young people may not realize, especially in the very beginning when they say, oh, he's doing something cool, I'm going to do that. It's probably not that difficult, right? And you say, hey, it's actually a lot more to it. So if you were talking to somebody who wants to do something similar to you, to say, screw this corporate job, I want to go do what he's doing. I love playing the violin. I want to go out and do that, and I'm sure I can make a good living for it. What would you expect? What kind of advice would you give in terms of what they can expect financially, without giving specific numbers about this is how your life is and this is how much work it actually takes? It's not a 9 to 5. It's not 4 hours. Like this is what you can expect, and this is where your money goes to whenever you make it. Yeah,
I would say first figure out in your finances what you can survive on, and then use that as your baseline and say, what is the minimum amount that I'd be all right living on? So you cut your DoorDash expenses. Maybe you give up your like Netflix subscription, keep your Hulu one, don't use Amazon Prime or something like that, or get Amazon Prime because you get all those things for cheap, even though you disagree with using Amazon. I don't know. What concessions can you make in your life to make art work? Because I think the main trouble with people that I talk to that want to do it but can't is it's a central thing. Like they're worried about all these other things in life, but see, what I'm worried about is making art. And once that becomes your focus, everything else bends to the will of that, and for better or worse. I mean, it's ruined my life in certain ways. Like, I don't think I'd qualify for really any other job at this point. I'd have to go back to school. I'd have to get some sort of training. It would take years for me to qualify for something else. Unless someone was like the same way as I am and they're running their own business and they see what I'm doing, they go by the seat of their pants the way that I do, then they'll be like, yeah, I'll hire you to do that because you seem to like be an all around like quick guy, So pretty much the money that you make, you're working your rear end off. It's hours on end, and you're not becoming rich off it. You're not out buying a nice Bentley or even a nice, Toyota or like a Lexus. You don't have a luxury apartment. It's literally
you reinvest that money into your business.
Right in,
so you
right back.
So you can exactly buy the new vinyl records. You can buy that sheet music because you know it helps to elevate your brand. So when people come by your station in Golden Gate Park or whatnot, you have everything there for them, and they can see it, pick it up, and feel like, oh, look at this nice vinyl album.
I want everything I do to exceed someone's expectations. They might find me in the street, but I want them to see when they get home that record that they bought from me for less than they would pay for a new record at Amazon, or Amoeba, is of the same or higher quality. And it generally will be the same or higher quality because I get it made at the same places. I know who, like, for most of them, previous to the big delays in pressing vinyl right now, I was getting things made at audiophile pressing plants, with the lacquering process, and I get things printed. One of my projects coming out on vinyl in the future, like a month from now, has tip-on jackets made, which is a very old style way of making them. But and all this stuff's like really expensive to do, but I wanted to do that so that when I do make that connection with someone and they do buy something of mine, I want that to be like a keepsake for them. Some of these people are going back to Europe or like Sweden or China. All the people from all over the world come to Golden Gate Park. And even though I'm a street musician, I actually know that no other street musician's doing what I'm doing. That's as far as like producing merchandise like that and making their own recordings like that. A lot of people, I think the advice I could give is to try not to think too conventionally about how things are done. You want a CD to sell because you're a violin player, right? We're going with this whole thing here, this thought experiment. Try to think of a way around spending $5,000 to record an album in a professional studio. What can you do? Otherwise, first I would say, if I was this person, I would say, figure out the minimum amount that you can live on and still be kind of comfortable. If you have a very expensive apartment, find one that's cheaper or find a roommate, and then see which way the wind blows after you start playing after like a couple months. And on top of that, the places that you pick to play, try to find places that suit you. Like, if you notice, I don't go to the Powell Street cable car turnaround anymore. They used to be one of my big spots when I had the jazz band because we were extremely loud and extremely bombastic. So now I set up in weirder places and calmer places where I think I can sort of fit into the atmosphere and the environment in a way that benefits me and benefits the listener. If you're looking for wild street shows, go pay the membership fee down at the wharf and like gather huge crowds. I have a buddy that's very good at doing that.
There's a membership fee to do that?
Yeah, it's like a couple $100 a year. That's why there's painted squares down there. I'd never once paid that.
Wow, I never thought that you had to pay to do that. I thought you just show up there and, okay, I claim this spot today, and then you can go do your thing. But,
right,
how about
exactly. That? Yeah, you have to be the member, and then there's a sign-up board and everything for that stuff down at the wharf. And a lot of it is some real novelty shit, like...
The robot guy or the guy that was Bushman for a while just jump out.
Yeah, Bushman was really fun. I liked Bushman.
Oh man!
But that guy never paid for spots, so you could tell he was just setting up wherever, man, and scaring people. But
like to what you were saying too, like even before you came here, you were literally at the CD manufacturing plant printing up more CDs because that's what your business is.
I was not only at the CD man, I was screaming at the owner of the CD manufacturing plant. He was screaming back at me, and we were going back and forth until we came to a compromise because the print job, in my opinion, wasn't right. And he was like, I'm losing money on this. And I'm like, well, dude, you should run your business better because you produce an unsaleable good, in my opinion. But we came to a compromise, and it made the goods look more saleable to me. And also, I get real anal about things like that. So I guess one piece of advice is, I don't know, you probably don't have to be as psycho about it as me. I want to make sure the print looks perfect, but I know that other people don't really notice.
You'd be surprised how much people pick up on the small details, that because you can tell, like, hey, someone took the time to make sure that this label's printed correctly. It's not off-centered, and then some people might say that's good enough, but to make sure everything is done right, it's a big thing. Well,
and another thing is like you always want to, and this is some advice I got from another friend, you play to your ideal audience. Yeah. So my ideal audience, I want them to appreciate those types of things. And so I'm going to make it the best I can both recording wise, the quality of recording. And that's a whole other thing you have to get into if you're going to do it, is like, you got to think about what microphones you're using. Like obviously you did. These are great mics. These are great vocal mics. These Shure SM7Bs.
Thank you. Try to find the best ones I could get that I think would work for me.
I mean, I use an Electro Voice RE20, but this is also a great contender. I actually almost just bought one of these just to try it out to see if I liked it better. They sound pretty good.
Well, at least it got you to get that, and so you can see this is what this thing sounds like.
Yeah,
That's
it's
awesome.
cool. But yeah, so all the thought goes into that. I mean, I have a subscription to Sound on Sound magazine, which is a technical music review magazine. So I'm learning all about new technologies in music and recording techniques too. I bought a book made by the engineers at Decca most recently, and that's what I use. Some of the techniques I learned in there to make the Satie record. That's awesome. So the piano recording sounds better on the Satie record than the record I just put out 6 months ago, because I already have learned, I've gathered more wisdom, and I'm always doing that, you know?
I got to tell you, like, if I never met you or never knew what you did, and I just sat here listening to how you run your business, I'd say, okay, this guy's onto something. He's got his mindset on what he wants. He cares about the product he puts out. That he cares about his craft, and he doesn't let anything get in his way. He's really determined to make things happen. Like if I was somebody looking for somebody to come and perform at my shop, whatever, like that's the kind of mindset that I want to have, as opposed to somebody that thinks I'm talented, you must give to me because I can play this instrument, therefore I deserve it. Yeah. Which you do see with a lot of young people, is that entitlement thing. Yeah. One thing I did want to
you want to get into the Gen Z stuff?
They have one piece of advice that I've always gotten, and I got from one of my guests a couple of weeks ago from Amanda Arenteria, is that she's learning all of the generations, we seem to fight our own battles. What she had to deal with in Gen X is different than us as millennials, and what we had to fight, and what we go through now is not what Gen Z is going through with the TikTok and everything. Right. Yeah. It's a whole different beast, and they're going to have to figure out how they're going to have to get through this new way of living with their own generation. Right. But with that, it's sort of the elephant in the room with musicians, especially, as you go out and perform on the streets. Yeah. How do you deal with, or do you think about the pressure, the financial pressures that are probably placed upon you? Just living in the Bay Area with our cost of living, as ridiculous as it is. Wild. Do you ever think about, I'm X age, I'm supposed to be at this point in my life, and do you think about the future? Like, am I going to take care? Is this going to support me as I get in the 70s or 80s? It's the kind of questions that a lot of us don't really talk about too much, but sometimes we kind of have to figure out, have we really thought that part through? The old school way was, our grandparents, you go work at the plant for 30 years. When you're done, you get a pension, right? And you're set the rest of your life, and you would have purchased your house. You would have paid it off in 30 years. So you can go retire. You're all good to go. It's not that way anymore. It wasn't for Gen X, and it's really not that way for us, especially living in this environment where you're having $2 million homes that, if you place that same home in the middle of Kansas, it's worth $100,000.
I think this actually dates back to my parents' generation, honestly. I mean, they don't even have security in that sense. I think this is some leftover post-war stuff, like the American dream, like the Tupperwares, whatever, Right. You can have one person working one job, buying 2 cars, a whole house, raising 3 kids, like that. Just disintegrated. It is slowly eroded and chipped away by the morally bankrupt people that run all these huge corporations that don't want to give anybody anything. They want to raise the prices and give you less.
There's a lot into that I wanted to break down, but as far as you go specifically,
as far as I go,
how do you have you kind of plan that out, or is it kind of like I'm going day by day? Do you have those days where you say, can I keep doing this when I'm 70 or 80? Am I going to be in this area that long?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I think I don't know. It is what I'm going to say. Just in general, I know where I'm going now, maybe the next 5 years, maybe the next 10 years. And I do have those thoughts like, okay, I want to start up my IRA, and I want to give. I sound like an idiot to myself because I've been saying that for 7-8 years now, but I need that $5,000 still, I'm not quite at the point where I can just start putting money away. I had some saved, but I ended up spending it in service of putting out more albums. Mm-hmm. Every time I make an album, it takes 3 or 4 weeks of work away where I don't go on the street, because I need to keep, when it's a critical moment like that and I'm finishing a project, I need to have like every single day needs to be one long string of days so I do not break my concentration.
Right.
And I've learned that about myself. That's the way I work. Some people can do it a lot better than that, and they're good at keeping up with or multitasking even with a very critical project that's at hand. I tend to let everything go, which is a really kind of bad habit, but everybody's starting to understand that about me in life, you know, and they give me some more leash when I have to do some things like that, like my girlfriend or my family, and, you know, I'm calling them less. I'm seeing everybody less, and, you know, I'm not such a fun guy anymore, but it does.
I've been there before.
Yeah.
I've been there before.
Yeah. Well, you gotta do something. You gotta do something, and no one's gonna do it for you. So you need to take the exact amount of time that you need to take to finish it, and that's something that I think is a non-negotiable when you're making art. If you really want it to be good, then there's a lot of non-negotiables. There's your practice time that you need. There's the business side of the time that you need, and then there's the production times that you need to record these albums, which is what you're practicing all that time for. Beyond performance. And performance is important because that's how you share your music with the world.
Right.
But for me, thinking about retirement and stuff like that, and is this sustainable? I think the more immediate thing that I think about that gets me down sometimes is you've seen me play. So there's some real serene, pretty stuff I'll do, and then there's some really, really like kind of wild stuff that I'll do where I'm just banging on that piano and it's like crazy.
Yeah, you can see how zoned in you are with that whole thing. Like,
yeah.
You're like 2 inches away from the keys sometimes.
Yeah.
You're right there.
That's outrageous. I got to fix that. That's like bad form. But like, yeah, I can. So there's that. You know, I'll practice 6-7 hours a day. That's different than performing 6 or 7 hours a day, which is what I'll do. You know, maybe Thursday to Sunday, or sometimes just Saturday and Sunday if that's all I can do that week. It depends, because I get worn out pretty bad. And the way I play when I have to perform like that, it's just really hard on my joints. So I do worry about getting arthritis. I don't think that what I'm doing out in the street is a very sustainable thing. I think I might be, I don't know, getting close to the tail end of when you can do stuff like that. I mean, I'm moving a piano all the time, and then I'm going and sitting for like 6 to 7 hours doing like really hardcore performances, and chances are you saw me play through one set, and then I stopped and then tried to sell my records or CDs and meet people, right? So then after you left and I did that, and we probably got acquainted and introduced ourselves, I started up 5 minutes later and did the same exact, like not the same exact thing, but I did another thing very similar to that. And then so I'm doing that 10 times, and so the amount of energy that's expended, like especially when it comes to my hands or my joints, I mean, by Sunday evening I'm pretty much brain dead, and all I can do is like eat really bad food, and I take a ton of ibuprofen and rub like anti-inflammatory kind of stuff all over my hands, my elbows, all my joints, because I'm just in a whole lot of pain usually.
Well, I definitely think that you're onto something in terms of how you're seeing the business expand by the albums and whatnot, and what can you do that actually is going to help drive income whilst also reducing your physical labor that you're doing a lot, which is something that I see with a lot of people in different industries, the hair industry, janitorial industries, where it's like you're with your hands all the time, but you can't keep that same pace up when you're 25 as when you're 45. No. How do you work to sort of keep the income going based on what you've done and reduce your physical things? So I think you're definitely on the right track when it comes to just your album and your quality that you're putting out there. And then having that as time goes on, people buy it. It's sort of like passive income for you, because it continues to sell while maybe you perform less as much.
Maybe then I can start doing shows. And like I've done the past couple weeks since shows are coming back, I've done a couple shows in venues and they were really successful. And I was like, okay, this is great. You know, I can make money doing this now.
Right.
Like it's like water, but, and if I could build that up a lot more, I think that's a really important thing. And, sort of these algorithms, you know, there's some gatekeeping involved somehow. I don't know why. They seem to make it, they tell you it's all fair, anybody has a chance, but that's not really true. So it's just a matter of like, not getting too down and not becoming embittered. I would say that's another piece of advice for someone starting out. Like, you might get treated like you're special the first couple years. I did, certainly. I was invited to the Monterey Jazz Festival less than a year after I started doing this with my buddy. But hey, you know, my second act started like 7 years ago when I left that band, and I haven't gotten that much traction with how I'm doing it by myself, except for the individual people that I'm meeting. And I found that social media is working less and less for the individual independent artists than it used to, you know?
Gotcha.
I got my first project reviewed back in 2016 by just paying for like a little Facebook ad for $20, and it got reviewed by the one site that I wanted it to get reviewed by, and I didn't even personally email them. They found it.
Wow.
You know, probably based on that promotion that I did, but I noticed that stuff does not work anymore. It's kind of broken unless you're already very popular. Then I think you're going to get a lot of likes and follows, and people are going to be chomping at the bit to buy whatever new thing you have. So
it's interesting because they keep changing the algorithms to keep people on these platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok,
Right.
and whatnot. And you got to be one step ahead of the game. Like what worked yesterday that doesn't work tomorrow. And
Right.
you know, so it's always a game of trying to figure out how that whole thing works. But with that, I kind of want to ask you how you balance everything. So how do you really, because you're spending a lot of time doing, you know, performing out there, plus
Yeah.
you're going out and you're getting your own CDs and vinyls printed and you get a hands-on in that. You know, how do you find time to spend with friends, family, relationships, and parents? And then how do you see that working? Because that's one thing that I think a lot of us can relate to in our generation, whether it's, you know, what you do for a living, or if you're in tech, or if you're commuting 3 hours because you're in LA or the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Is that we get so committed to our jobs and what makes us the money, but then it's like, do we have time to really do what else everybody's requiring of us? Friends, family, relationships.
Right.
How do you find that balance, or is it something you still work through?
It's something I'm still working through. It was a lot easier back when I wasn't going so hard on this stuff and everything was kind of just rolling along with that jazz band because we were hired for gigs constantly. I had to do no work to get that stuff. Once I left that, I was on my own again, and I was like, okay, well, now I'm making money for myself, but I also got some wild hair up my ass. Like I was going to make the next great thing in terms of like composition in my own little niche. Sounds, you know, and I was like, this is what I want to focus on, and I'm going to do a really good job at it. And so far, I think I have been doing a real good job at it. It's just like, it requires an incredible amount of time, which is something that I would also tell someone that was starting out to do it is like, it's the same thing I realized back in college. Like, this is going to take all your effort, all your time, and you have to be committed to it. Other things are going to fall apart, but you need to remain committed to it. And I still hold that true. But other things have come into my life, and I am, you know, I do have to be understanding of that. So when it comes to a relationship, you know, luckily the person I'm with, she really understands what I do. And over time we've worked it out, and she gives me the space that I need to do my work. And that's an okay thing now. You know, she accepts that, and I accept the things that she needs to do for herself too. It's just that mine, you know, it's different because her job, it starts and stops. Actually, not quite though. She's a funeral arranger. She is talking to these families. They, you know, that seems like, I think she works too much, but, we do end up coming together. Like we make plans. So I've become more of a planner, you know?
Yeah.
It's not often where I'll say yes nowadays when someone calls me up. It's like, hey man, I'm in town for the afternoon. You want to go get lunch? I'm like, no, I can't do that right now. So it's hard to practice saying no to people. That's something I don't like doing. I have a very hard time doing that. But I have to do that a lot. And then, but usually I'll follow it up with like, hey, I can't do this right now, but what about like next Monday evening, you know?
Correct.
Can we do it then? And then if they're cool with that, then I'm like, all right, yeah, well, I'll commit to that and meet up with it. So I try to not flake out as much on those types of commitments, even though I had to tell you a couple times, I think already, that I couldn't make the show. And I'm sorry about that.
That's no problem at all, because
But-
I understand we all have lives, everything gets busy, and
Yeah.
you know, this is part of what I expect, is that people have to reschedule. Things come up.
Yeah.
You know, people
Yeah.
some people have kids and the babysitter doesn't. I totally get it, man. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with it. So
As long as it's not like a chronic problem with the person that you're talking to and they do
Mm-hmm.
it it's just like all the time, then you know that's like, oh, dude, everybody's busy. It's about making time. So that's what I do like. It's just something that's scheduled, you know. And for us, we had to do this like a couple months in advance.
Right.
And I was like,
That's-
I got wrap my brain about it. Even this morning, I was like, man, I got that thing today. And I was like, I got so many things to do. But I was like, no, we committed to this. I'm committed to coming here. And like,
And I appreciate you doing that, because,
And-
you know, it's a lot. It's something that we learn as we get into our 30s, that,
Yeah.
you know, how important it is to maintain your commitments.
well,
Because,
you did it.
Which one?
You did.
I did.
Today.
Oh,
You
yes.
committed.
Yes,
you
I
were
did.
here. You had all the stuff set up. So like,
It's
Yeah.
exactly. I commit because to me it's important to get information out there with so many people that I may never ever sit down on my own and talk to. Like I would never sit next to you in the park while you're playing, because you got your gig going on. So I'm just enjoying the music, and then, you know, when me and my wife go on, we go continue walking or whatever it is we actually do. But to actually hear the person behind the keys and what they actually, why they do what they do, how do you deal with the pressures that we all face in our generation? How do you get through every day when, you know, what advice do you give to people who want to do something similar to you, or who think, maybe rightly or wrongly, that it's so easy that, you know, you just go perform and people give you money. Enough said, right? I can be a millionaire doing this. And then you kind of realize it doesn't work that way. It's a lot of time, a lot of effort, honing your craft, going out there, putting that piano into the van. And by the way, when your van breaks down, guess who has to fix it?
No, I do. Yeah, exactly.
That's the other thing that I remember you posted on Instagram, is that you blew out a rotor or something with that piano in the back of the van, right? And you had to go fix it literally in a parking lot somewhere.
Yeah, that was more of like I chose to ignore the fact that my brakes were pretty old, and eventually I damaged the rotor on the passenger side. I mean, it would have been a lot easier to change some brake pads, but this ended up not being that, because, you know, things fall by the wayside. You get into something and you're like, I'm going to deal with that a little bit later, especially if it's a big job like that for me.
Yeah.
I don't consider myself a mechanic, even though I have to work on my van all the time. So yeah, that was a rotor that I had to swap in a Harbor Freight parking lot. Lucky enough, those Harbor Freight dudes are so nice. They're like, yeah, you can work here. And I was like, cool, because on MLK where I live, people are driving like 60 miles per hour down that street, and there's all manner of activities happening out there. And I do not want to be, that's like a very exposed position for me to be in, underneath my car and with everything, all my tools out and everything. I'm like, I can't do that out there.
Yeah, it's amazing that people forget, just in certain parts, in certain areas, it's like you don't want to, even in broad daylight, you don't want to be around there.
You just don't want to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, so do you have any collaborations in mind? Actually, I forgot to ask you about that. Do you see yourself going back to working with the band again, or as you look back upon it, do you think it was the right choice to make for you? And did you understand kind of what the pros and cons were when you said, I'm going solo, I'm not following the way you guys are doing things here?
Yeah, the pros were that I'm the captain of my destiny in a lot of ways. And I'm the master now. No one can disagree with me because, well, it's just me. Yeah. And a little bit of that is like egomaniacal, I guess, or like just crazy. But with piano, it works because you're doing your own thing. You know, it doesn't really necessarily need to rely on other people playing instruments around you. It's a self-sustaining kind of instrument. But I do work with the black metal side of things. That is a collaborative effort, or at least it was, until I couldn't work with the drummer anymore on this last album. So that one I ended up playing the drums myself, which is a whole other thing, because I had to start studying how to play metal drums. And like I'd been a drummer my whole life, you know, as long as I've been playing piano, but I never did like blast beats, double kick pedal stuff. And you know, I basically taught myself via like YouTube instructionals, like here's some popular metal fills, here's some variations, came up with my own variations, my own style with it. And then, recorded, an entire hour-long black metal album on drums because I couldn't work with a drummer.
Wow. Jeez.
So that was a whole other project there that I had to go ahead and take care of, was learning that. I rented out this huge like airplane hangar to record those drums too, to get like a massive sound. So that was a really fun aspect of it. My sister came down. She's really good she's a recording engineer, or does her own recordings as well. So that's she engineered the sessions, and I got to play the drums.
That's awesome.
That was good. Yeah.
Wow. This has been exciting stuff to learn about, just how the ins and outs of your day actually goes. If you were to give, I'm going to say advice, but if somebody was to go and see you perform, or maybe not you, they see another street performer in a park somewhere and they appreciate the music, if they wanted to contribute, and people are like, I don't know, should I give $1? Should I give $5, $20? Like, I don't know what do I actually do? Like, do you have any etiquette tips you can give for people who are just enjoying your content in terms of how they can support you or any other street performer as they see you, knowing now that the person behind the instrument, they are putting a lot of effort into it. It's not just they pull up one day, play a few minutes, and then they're out of there, no big deal. It's just a lot of work that goes into it.
Yeah, and I think it's really hard for people to suss that out when they're watching a street musician. But I think that my performances in the park and elsewhere are a cut above what they would see on, like, say, Hayton Ashbury, like a guitar player playing with their bag out, like just strumming a few chords. I mean, this is an operation that I have going here.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like moving parts for it, for me, in order to be able to move the piano around. I guess for me, I don't know, it sounds really cold, but money is the thing that helps the most. And it's the saddest thing to say, because people always want to go back to like, you should teach a man to fish rather than like give him fish. But honestly, I'm teaching myself to fish, and I just need money to start fishing more. And like, I want people to know, at least in my case, and I think a lot of there's a few other buskers that I know, and I think if you sit there and listen to them long enough, and maybe you talk to them a little bit more, you find out about them, what their real level of dedication is. But I know that for me, they should know that their money is going right back into what I'm doing. And it's gonna, what that $5 or $10 or $20 buys me is time to write more music and record more music, or it's $20 more towards the microphones, the gas, or whatever it is. There's a huge laundry list. Life is really messy. Everybody has this.
Right. So, well, so you have some new albums out. Tell me about those.
Yeah, the album from December 2021. So that one's only 5 months old at this point.
So I think we totally missed this part here, but in terms of the type of music that you perform, so people can say, this is something that I want to listen to. What is it more? Is it more related to classical? Is it more contemporary, R&B?
Yeah. So the solo piano music that I release, I would say in more recent years, like with these new two albums, the two new albums, they're more classically leaning. And I still have a love for that kind of early jazz sound, very like sweet kind of swaying music. So there's quite a few pieces that have that on there too, that you would call it like stride piano, but I would say it'd be more contemporary, because I'm not doing as complicated of like early jazz chord voicings as I think you would hear in some of those things. So mine have this sort of more modern film score vibe mixed with early jazz, and then some pieces I put on the album are straight like attempts at classical pieces.
So if you were to kind of just break it down for the layman here, what would you compare your music to as something that people would probably relate to in modern? Like, would you compare it to a score from a movie? Like, hey, if you ever saw this movie, this is the kind of music I
right,
make.
yeah. So I watched lots of, that's a good way to put it. I guess Max Richter, he's a famous pianist that writes scores for movies. He did the one I liked the best that he did was actually in Black Mirror. He did the first episode of the third season.
Okay.
That's really good. A lot of people know Philip Glass. His music is used in a lot of scores, so it sounds almost minimalistic like that.
So you're similar to Philip Glass in terms of the new albums that you're doing now?
No, these albums are kind of meditative in that same way, but not as arpeggiated. They're, I don't know what to call it. They're just like standalone piano pieces that involve early jazz. Some people say it reminds them of the Westworld soundtrack, I guess. So
gotcha.
Maybe that's a good thing, because there is some of that like honky tonk in there too.
What I'll do is if I can get a hold of some of your clips, I'll try to put them on the reels that I make of you, so people can see you as we talk, and they can listen to your own score behind it to get a sense of, okay, this is what he's doing. So. And because a lot of times people are like, hey, is it like, was it that, who's that guy that does all the epic sound? Like, does it sound like a Marvel movie, or does it sound like James, who's that guy? I can't even think of the guy. Those epic composers are like John Williams, or does it sound like that?
Yeah,
or does it sound like something that I'm used to hearing from those big action movies?
You know, like Jan Tiersen, Amelie?
What movie? Like
Amelie.
Amelie.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's like
movie
a
Amelie.
kind of French art film. It was popular, though. You would recognize the piece if I played it for you. I would say it's that vein a little bit.
Vein.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, just like nice piano score.
Nice piano score. So something that you would probably listen to in a relaxing environment, like put it on and kind of read a book or something.
Yeah.
Okay. That helps people understand what would I use as, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Compared to like, I need something to go work out to, or I need something.
No, it's not
to
a
go.
party record. No.
All right,
Yeah.
good. So I'll make sure to put the links to that in the description. The best way to get it, is that through Amoeba, or is it through purchasing it through a website that you have?
I would say purchase it through our collective website. I am part of this collective. Oh, I'm founder of this collective. We started in Oakland called Handsmade. And right now we're selling all the merch just through that.
And are there samples? Like if they click on it, they can get the sample sound. Like if you go to Instagram, you can get.
Oh, you know what? The best place to go then is just my website, johnstephenmorgan.com, because there's links to where you can buy it, but that is the place where you can actually listen to it first. And there's links to Spotify, but all this music is on all the major streaming platforms.
Gotcha.
So you can just type my name in.
I'll make sure to link it up for everybody so they can go to the description of the YouTube video, or if they listen to the podcast on Apple or Spotify, then it'll be in the description down there.
Yeah.
To get a sample so they can put the name with the face as to what you actually do and say this is the kind of music that you actually listen to. In a way, maybe that if people can never come out to Golden Gate Park. By the way, what is your schedule usually if they want to come and see you perform?
Yeah, I'm going to say it's Sundays usually. I would bank on like 10 to 4 on Sundays, and then right now I've been doing this thing down at Chrissy Field on Saturdays, so I'll go kind of by the yacht club. It's like this area where the steps go down to the water, and there's like one tree, and it looks at the Golden Gate Bridge, and the Palace of Fine Arts. So you'll either find me Saturdays at the Palace or at Chrissy Field, right there in that spot, directly across the big street marina, I think.
Gotcha.
At Chrissy Field. And then when I'm done playing, I'm doing doubles. I'm trying to make a lot of money right now to invest in doing the Black Metal Project live. So I need to buy amplifiers, synthesizers, all this stuff. I made a huge spreadsheet for.
Oh, wow.
So I'm raising money to do that now. So I'm trying to work doubles on the weekends. And so that's part of it. Yeah. Chrissy Field. And then like in the evening, I'd say like 5 to 8. If I can, I'm going to go play Golden Gate Park just for those evening hours.
Gotcha.
And then Thursday, usually I'm gonna try to be at this one spot on Lake Merritt. It's at East 18th and Lakeshore, around the time of sunset. So like 6:30 to 8:30.
Be careful around there.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, be careful around there. Yeah, but mostly they can find you in San Francisco, Chrissy Field, Golden Gate Park.
If you want to really enjoy it, like in a nice way, don't come to that lake spot. That's like a happenstance, and it just turns into something nice sometimes. But the best place, Golden Gate Park.
Gotcha. And you update your schedule on your Instagram or your website?
The way I do it is, Instagram. I take a photo of the piano and say I'm here till blah, blah, blah. Just because there's so many events that they do post, and then there's some that they don't. And so I don't know. It's hard to guarantee that I'll be there because there might be something I just didn't know about.
Gotcha.
That, and if the park rangers catch me, they threaten me with a ticket and make me leave. So
I believe it. So the best way to get a hold of you is Instagram?
Absolutely.
And that's at, what's your handle?
At John Stephen Morgan Pianist. John with an H, Stephen with a V.
Stephen with the V, Morgan Pianist.
Yep.
That's a long title.
John Stephen Morgan Pianist. Yeah. Maybe I should have picked a better one.
Well, it is who you are, but you know, that's something to think about. And also your website, is that updated constantly?
Yeah. johnstephenmorgan.com. I update that regularly.
johnstephenmorgan.com to hear samples of your music. And then also there's links there to purchase it if you want the whole album. And just to understand that you are doing, very great work. You're putting a lot of time and effort into it. You want to make a great product here too. So anybody that listens to his music, this is a way to help support an artist and help him refine his craft and be able to get the products that he needs to take it to the next level. Yeah. To enjoy it. Was it the Black Metal Project?
Yeah.
Black Metal Project. And that is a what again?
That's called Wretch, W-R-E-C-H-E.
And that is that a band or is that a project?
It's a band. It's like right now it's like a band project, but I'm gathering guys, and we're already doing some rehearsals to start playing it live, hopefully by the end of the year.
Gotcha.
It's like the most complex work I've ever written, where I've applied all my knowledge and skill in a very specific way. It's kind of my art for art's sake project, and it's niche, but I think, even if you're not into metal, it's something great. It might draw you into the genre of listening to metal too. I've been a long time fan of metal in all forms. So it is, and it's, I think, a very ripe genre to work in. There's a lot of innovation happening, and so this is a real oddball thing even for that genre.
Awesome. And if you could give like one piece of advice to somebody who's either doing what you're doing now or wants to start, what would that be? Whether it's financial advice or advice that keeps you going when you're having those days where nobody's coming and you're not generating any income and the bill collectors are calling, or whatever it is. Anything, that one piece of advice that you can give them based upon what you've experienced.
I would say it's, in those times where there's a whole lot of doubt and you don't know what you're doing. I don't know. What I tell myself is, you're not doing it for money. You didn't really start doing this even for other people. And you certainly didn't do this to become like cool or accepted in any way. So you just have to remember exactly why it is that you love to do what you're doing. And that is to play music, to make art, and to enjoy other people's music and other people's art. And that's the beauty right there. That's life. That's being alive. So if you start from that point and you got nothing, you have nothing to lose. And but at least you have that, and go in with no expectations.
No expectations.
It's better that way. Because then you get entitled to something. And if I go in not expecting anything, I know I've played the park 1,000 times, but I should never assume that anything's going to just be given to me. And so if you have that one single thing in your core that you really love about it, then nothing can really hurt you. You can't really be so down about something not working out the way you might have wanted it to.
Great advice. John Morgan, everybody. Thank you
right.
for coming on the show.
Thanks so much.
Like and subscribe to the video if you like it. And again, thank you. And I look forward to seeing you back at the park again.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Thank
Have
you
a
so
good
much.
one.